The F1 2025 season marks 75 years since the sport's initial conception all the way back in 1950. And whilst the first race of the 2025 season is in Melbourne, Australia, this hasn't always been the case in F1. So I'm not trying to put you in the spotlight or anything, but I'm just going to ask you this straight up.
F1!
How many countries do you think have hosted the first F1 race of the season? If you're like me, you got your fingers out and after about 3 countries you just stopped guessing. But this could not be further from the truth. Okay, I'll stop gatekeeping. In fact, the first race of the season has been held in 11 different countries, spanning over 6 continents. It would be 7 if the FIA locked in and did the Antarctica Grand Prix. But you get the idea. Some of these season openers were held in countries that don't even have F1 races anymore. Point being, F1 has traveled to some pretty unexpected places over the past 75 years. So I figured that today we're going to dive into all of F1's historical season opening races, the good ones and the bad ones.
It's unfortunate.
If some eras interest you more than others, feel free to navigate to them down below with the timestamps. But without further ado, let's get right into it. The 1950s, where racing was nothing but fast cars, no safety, and cigarettes were still good for you. The UK only ever hosted the season opener once, in 1950. Most drivers wore cotton skull caps and didn't use seatbelts because they thought in the event of an accident they would rather be thrown from their vehicle.
Right.
I'm not even exaggerating. Seatbelts weren't compulsory till 1972. The next 2 season openers were held in Switzerland. However, this was short-lived, as formulaone was completely banned in Switzerland in 1955. The next 6 season openers were held in Buenos Aires in Argentina. And closing out the 1950s, Monaco hosted the very last season opener of that decade. But yeah, whilst the 1950s did produce Formula 1, I've got no idea why it's referred to as the golden age. I mean, seriously, these guys didn't have Instagram Reels, Fortnite, or podcasts. Like, get a grip. Now we've got the 60s. Monaco hosted the opening race of the season 4 more times in this decade. Unlike the state of the current Monaco Grand Prix,
Boring!
The race was in its prime in the 60s. You could stand right up next to the action, actually see cars overtake each other, and the occasional dip in the Monaco harbour. Even the commentary was better back then.
Tremendous excitement. Ascari has overshot the chicane. The car has somersaulted straight into the harbour.
Anyway, the Netherlands became the 5th country to host a season opener at the Dutch Grand Prix in 1962. And later that decade, South Africa became the 6th country to host a season opener in Formula 1. And the circuit was absolutely nuts. It was one of the hottest and one of the highest circuits used in F1 history, with hardly any runoff area in some places. Like, this dangerous combination sounds more like Rainbow Road than a Formula 1 race. In saying that, the South African Grand Prix was a very entertaining race, and it's a shame that it got cancelled, and it probably won't be coming back for a while. Plus, it looks like Rwanda will steal South Africa's spot as the guaranteed African race on the calendar. That's right, Mohammed bin Salman and His Excellency Paul Kagame are cooking up what might be the least obvious sport washing since the Saudi World Cup. Okay, mini yap over. Just remember, in the 1960s, the opening race changed a lot. The 70s. Alright, here we go. The F1 cars didn't even look like cars anymore. It looked like a middle school science fair. And going with the cigarette theme from earlier, the cigarette companies basically owned F1 now. So, yeah, very cool. With that, Brazil became the 7th country to host a season opener. For reference, seatbelts only just became compulsory. In light of new developments like this, other components of the car were also invented. The air intake systems got so big, they were trying to get Wi-Fi.
The Bluetooth device.
I mean, seriously, look, they're massive.
And do you know what else is massive?
Moving on, no other new countries held an opening race in the 1970s. The only other races were held in South Africa and Argentina. Quick side note, like the South African circuit, this race was crazy. Like, sometimes there were more than 10 retirements. Just look at all the reasons here. Like, the closest we'll get to this in modern F1 was that time Lance Stroll and Valtteri Bottas decided to go bowling.
Nice run!
Anyway, even though there hasn't been a race there since the last century, they're trying to get it back on the calendar, which isn't likely though, as the Argentinian government would not be funding this. And their current president seems more busy with sales calls and rug-pulling crypto coins, so... That's all I got for the 70s though. Now it's time for the 1980s. The USA became the 8th country to host the opening race of an F1 season, at Long Beach in 1981. Now, before any of you F1 gurus have a go at me, no, this is correct. The South African Grand Prix held before it that year didn't end up counting in the end because of some beef between organizations. And I only know this because I'm making a video about it. Like, if you know this, I'm scared for you, bro. Touch grass. Anyhow, the United States was the only new country to host a season opener this decade. But before we move on to the 90s, honorable mention goes to the sheer craziness of the cars of this era. Like, some people say,
bring back the fucking V12s.
Some people say bring back fueling at the pit stop.
sprint and speed.
No, I say bring back 1400 horsepower cars. This 1986 Benetton is nearly 3 times as powerful as a 2025 GT3 RS. Like the modern day F1 cars sit at 1000 horsepower. Okay, no more yap about numbers, I'm sorry. Without further delay, let's get right into the 1990s. Brazil, South Africa, and the land of the free hosted the first 6 season openers. But this all changed as Australia became the 9th country to host an F1 season opener. Fun fact, Martin Brundle crashed in this race in the exact same way at the exact same corner that Fernando Alonso did 20 years later. If that name rings a bell, it's because Martin Brundle is the GOAT of F1 commentary.
Clarkson, shouldn't you be like planting turnips and milking your chickens?
I can't believe how big they've got.
Oh, they're massive.
Shut up, I'm not dragging. Also, Martin Brundle was commentating Fernando's crash. Here's what he had to say.
Oh, that all looks a bit familiar to me, to be honest.
Bottom line is, spot the difference. Moving on though, Melbourne hosted the remainder of the season openers of this decade, bringing us all the way up to the 2000s. This saw Bahrain become the 10th country to host the opening race of an F1 season, and in fact, in this decade, it was the only country aside from Australia to do so. The 2000s is also the time period that every Ferrari fan wishes they wake up in when they go to bed at night.
Champion of the world!
This is because Michael Schumacher was driving a rocket ship at the time, in which the engine unit was primarily designed by Matteo Binotto.
Head of the group of engine, Mr. Binotto.
He helped Ferrari win 7 of the 10 Constructors' Championships of this decade. I mean, talk about dominance in a fall from grace. You know, I kind of understand delusional Ferrari fans in 2025. Hell, I'm one of them. Break the curse, Lewis, please. This brings us right up to the 2010s. I don't have too much to say about this decade, aside from the fact that once again, Australia absolutely dominated the season opener. The only exception to this was the Bahrain Grand Prix of 2010, in which Fernando won for his debut on Ferrari. Take me back. That's it for the 2010s though. I could glaze Albert Park for 2 minutes, but I don't think my viewership base would appreciate that. Congratulations for reaching the final decade. Austria became the 11th and final country to host an F1 season opener. If this seems a little bit strange, it's because of that canon event that happened this year.
Get your ass on.
But yeah, that season was a bit odd. We had this calendar to originate with, but that slowly changed into the little bit of this, little bit of that, our calendar. Anyhow, that makes the 11 countries that have hosted the opening race of an F1 season. But which countries hosted the most, you ask? The answer to that is Australia. The Australian Grand Prix has been held 23 times as the opening race of the F1 season, more than anyone else. So whilst this record is set in stone for now, with new circuits coming to the calendar soon, this could change in the future. But that's it, yap over.
Keep yapping, man.
Thank you so much for watching this video. The support you guys have been giving me is absolutely...
I don't know what to say, to be honest. Buzzing, absolutely buzzing.
Bonus sector, George Russell new clip dropped. F1 is so back.
This is what victory feels like. Yeah!